Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to Garden Report, Celtics CLNS Media. We are here, New York City, Brooklyn. Celtics Nets tonight. Undermanned Nets, fully healthy Celtics. Talked a little bit about that game in the other video, along with a number of Celtics rumors percolating ahead of the NBA trade deadline. But there is concrete stuff to dig our teeth into. Is it Thursday? It feels like it. Normally, the two deals that happened today, 48 hours as we record this ahead of the NBA trade deadline, would be the biggest deals happening, entering a deadline. But feels like we're just setting the table for what's going to happen later this week, as CJ McCollum got traded from the Trailblazers today to the New Orleans Pelicans. As Jake Fisher originally reported, there was heavy interest in New Orleans in bringing CJ in, his veteran status, making a push for the play-in tournament, and being competitive until Zion Williamson comes back, and then becoming maybe a player in the Western Conference once that happens, and along with the other moves they've made. Let's start there. CJ McCollum, who I just love, 30, 40 point ceiling as a scorer, good passer, competitive on both ends of the court. He can be a defensive liability, which is going to be interesting for the Pelicans, who have not played much defense in recent years. Do not look to be a great defensive team when it fully comes together here. But on the offensive end of the floor, you think of a shooter like McCollum. That's a guy who can accentuate Zion, the playmaker, Ingram, the scorer/playmaker there, as well as Devontae Graham, who has shown to be a good shooter in this league, and Jonas Valanciunas, who can shoot and wasn't included in this deal. So the final details here: Pelicans send a mid-round protected pick to the Trailblazers that, as it stands now, would be the number 9 pick in the lottery. If it jumps up into the top 4, the Pelicans will retain that pick, as well as if it falls out of the lottery, as the Pelicans hope it can here, they'll retain that pick as well. I think it's protected up to 15. Blazers also end up in this deal getting Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Hart, rock-solid starting level player at the guard wing spot, and favorite of mine, Tomas Satoransky. I'm interested to see if they'll end up buying him out, especially if the Celtics move on from Schroeder. I'd love to see Satoransky end up in Boston, but we'll talk about that on post-game tonight. I'll leave that for now. On the Pelicans end of things, they do end up getting several players back from the Blazers as well. Larry Nance is a throw-in who is injured right now. Can be immensely helpful as a 4-5, small ball 5 man for a team. He's been coveted by numerous teams from Cleveland and Blazers over the last couple of years, as well as a throw-in in Tony Snell as well, who can maybe play some spot minutes off the bench for you. So I like it for the Pelicans. The hardest thing in this league is to go from being bad with some good draft picks and promising talent to being a good team, and a guy like CJ is a key to doing that. So I give the Pelicans a passing grade here on this trade, even if they did give up quite a bit in terms of draft compensation. Josh Hart, Alexander Walker, young guys who showed potential for them, but potential never parlayed into winning for New Orleans. And at some point, if they're going to try to keep Zion around here, make this Ingram thing work, they got to start winning. And this is the kind of deal GM and Griffin, who has been on the ropes a little bit over the last year or so here, a good coach who's showing some promise in Willie Green. I've talked for a month now about how solid Willie Green has the Pelicans playing right now. I think they're 19-15 over the last however many games here. It's a good time to actually consolidate a little bit and make a move on a guy like CJ who can help them. And listen, this guy's rock solid in the room. Hear nothing but great things out of the Blazers about him, and he was certainly a staple of the Portland Trailblazers backcourt with Lillard and CJ for the last however many years, nearly a decade now. They're going to miss CJ McCollum in Portland, even though the time was right to move on from that money and into something else. Now, what is that? They've now traded Norman Powell. They have traded CJ McCollum, one of their 2 stars. Yusuf Narkich, you would assume would be on his way out next as an expiring contract, as well as Robert Covington, and they haven't recouped all that much for these guys. Cap space, certainly. Who are they going to be players for with that cap space? Is Lillard going to take a second look at all of this and where it's going this summer, even though everything is pointed toward him making it work with the Blazers? Those are the big questions Blazers fans and management are going to be asking now. Other deal today, bigger Celtics implications. Domantas Sabonis, within the last hour, traded from the Indiana Pacers to the Kings. All right, Kings trying to make a move on that play-in tournament as well. But what goes back to the Pacers? Tyrese Haliburton. Oh, I can't believe it. the Kings traded Haliburton before De'Aaron Fox. Gave up on that potential there to win now with Sabonis, Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb coming back over from the Pacers as well. And the Pacers get Buddy Hield out of this, along with Tristan Thompson, who I'd assume they're just going to move on from now. Stellar rebuilding move from the Pacers. They get a guy that they can slowly build around and grow with, and Tyrese Haliburton, who, when he has played in Fox's spot this year, has looked like a double-double guy with assists. Now, it's interesting that over the last couple weeks here, after that 50-point loss to the Celtics, he said, I'm not going to let the Kings culture bring me down. He has kind of been in agony in multiple different interviews about what's going on in Sacramento. So it's great to see him freed from that situation. I am bummed to see Sabonis end up in Sacramento. Who knows if they're even going to make the playoffs with this win-now style move that they're making here. Everybody seems to be down on this move, and I am one of them. I was in the camp of building around Haliburton over Fox, see what you can go get for Fox. They're apparently going to try to make a playoff push now with Harrison Barnes, Marvin Bagley, Raquan Holmes, Sabonis, Davion Mitchell moving into that two-guard spot. And what's the encompassing trend among all those players is that there's no shooting. There's no floor spacing. Sabonis is just being surrounded by another five-man like Miles Turner, who's trying to fill the paint at times, has the ball in his hands. I don't know what they're doing in Sacramento. Now, Indiana, sensational. And these are two guys that I was intrigued by eventually ending up in Boston, two of the bigger fish that the Celtics could have consolidated and gone on all in for. Now, did they have something better to give up for Sabonis than Tyrese Haliburton? No. Did they have something, barring a Jaylen Brown trade, that was better than Domantas Sabonis going to Sacramento for Haliburton? No. So it's just a lost opportunity here for the Celtics going into the future of one of those guys potentially being available for them for everything else. Now, Celtics, as I said in my other video with their rumors circulating today, feels like they're just going to end up moving on to the off-season and seeing what options are available for them to consolidate then. Add a third star to Brown and Tatum, and Rob, I would throw into that list as well. So a fourth star, if you believe in Rob becoming a star. I see nothing wrong with that. At this point, it's just who's out there. As for the deadline right now, next big things to look at would obviously be Miles Turner moving on from Indiana. Number of teams interested in him. Not sure they'll get a massive return, so it's not surprising that they moved on from Sabonis for a big return there. Other guys, Yusuf Narkich, Jared Weiss on Dome Theory last week said Celtics could be a player for Narkich. So we'll see if they take him on in a, let's say, rental-style move since his contract's expiring. He does fit the TPE. Who knows how much you have to give up to Portland to move off an expiring guy? Is it a second-round pick? Is it 2 seconds? That's intriguing for the Celtics as a backup 5 option, especially with Ennis not showing to be all that reliable in recent weeks or even part of the rotation at all. I definitely keep an eye on Narkich heading in this deadline. Ben Simmons, James Harden, that goes without saying. All eyes are on that, and I do expect there to be strong momentum toward a deal happening given the circumstances that both those teams are in now. Other things going on around the league, you got Magic veterans. Could they be sold? Terrence Ross, Robin Lopez, those type players, I definitely keep an eye on them. And you got other rebuilders like the Rockets and Eric Gordon, stuff like that going on. And of course, Dennis Schroeder, who I talked about in our other video as well. What's available in the offseason for the Celtics? I mean, 2 guys in the Mavericks, Dorian Finney-Smith, Jalen Brunson. They might have to make decisions on them by the deadline, given that they're unrestricted free agents. And you look at a guy like Bradley Beal, who I do not expect to be traded this week, but he might reassess his future after another disappointing season with Washington. He hasn't made any move on it yet. You never hear that there's real discomfort coming out of the Beal camp. But that has seemed to be the guy that the Celtics are fixated on for a while, given the Bradley Beal-Jason Tatum relationship, as well as numerous voices in the media continuing to talk about if Beal did move on from Washington. Philly would obviously be there, Harden interest aside, but if Harden gets done now, the Celtics the front runner for Beal. Those are the kind of things that make you think that the Celtics stay flexible from a sign-and-trade perspective. You got to stay below the hard cap in the offseason, so you can't take on long-term money now if you want to do a sign and trade in the offseason, as well as Brunson, who I would qualify as a big move if the Celtics were able to pair him long-term with their young core. So those are the two guys, obviously, the Celtics might end up holding out for and seeing what happens this offseason, as well as allowing Ime Udoka to continue to gel with this young core, Josh Richardson, and the bench guys. Only other thing I'd look at this deadline is the Schroeder situation and those Dallas guys and other moves that could happen in the meantime while the Celtics continue to stay patient here. Harrison Barnes a guy as well after that Kings trade. You would suspect that he'd be part of what they're doing going forward, but I've always been interested in Barnes joining the Celtics core too as a shooter and wing defender. If you could send out enough money that matches him, let's say it's Richardson and Romeo and Neesmith or something like that. So those are the deals that are floating around. We will obviously have coverage of everything here on CLNS Media. Celtics All Access, starting with Celtics Nets tonight, the last game for the Celtics before the NBA trade deadline. I'm Bobby Manning from New York City, Brooklyn.